Hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. I'm reading The Wheel of Time for the first time and sharing the experience with you. This is One Good Turn, The Eye of the World, and today I am covering Chapter 32! First off, I'm so glad that after the cliffhanger of the last chapter, we went straight into this chapter, that we didn't go back to Perrin or Nynaeve. And the fact that we didn't go back to Perrin suggests to me the possibility that we won't go back to Perrin until Caemlyn. If Rand and Mat are able to make it the rest of the way to Caemlyn without issue, hopefully that'll be the case, I expect we're going to meet up with the two of them from Rand's POV. He'll, see them as prisoners or something. Although, as I say that, it would seem like such a waste to miss out on some of the White Cloak's questioning. So, you know what? I'm gonna retract that. I think we will get at least one more Perrin or Egwene POV, more likely Perrin, before we make it to Caemlyn. Okay, but man alive, this was a tense chapter. Rand, buddy, trust your instincts. If they say don't stay at the inn, don't stay at the inn. Mat, why is it, Mat, that you are so paranoid and suspicious when there's less cause to be? But here in Mos Eisley, where clearly no one would have any sort of problem going after you, you are totally fine. Look, I get it. You guys are hungry and it is raining out. That part sucks. No doubt. But, uncool, Mat. They make it to the Four Kings, and it's this cool place. Cool, I guess. It's a town that is essentially built at the intersecting line between two major roads. So there's a part of the town in each of the four corners of the town. You get the sense that this is I don't want to say dangerous town. You get Western vibes. I felt like I was watching a Western. There's dust, fences, they're peeling, and a lot of places are boarded up. Yeah, it's very much Western motif. In my mind, at least as I imagine it, as described. There are, parking lots for carriages. It's a big, big travel town, merchant town. And essentially, the farmers can barely make enough for themselves. The way this town functions is through trade, not farming. Rand is immediately set on edge. Everything is garishly painted. Rand wants to move straight on right away. And look, as of yet, I'm with Mat when he says, "And sleep under a hedge tonight? In that?" And he points to the clouds in the sky signaling oncoming rain. "I'm used to a bed again. Maybe one of these places doesn't have a musician. Anyway, I'll bet they don't have a juggler." And there are a bunch of inns. They go to a bunch of inns. Most of them do, in fact, have musicians. Actually, I think, most except the one decrepit one that they do end up having to go to. They have no luck at the other inns, so they go to a place called the Dancing Cartman. And it's another gaudy, brightly painted building. They go in and there's only 6 men or so at the tables. They're not talking to each other. It's dusty. The maids are pretending to be busy, but they're not actually doing much, if anything. And we get the description of the innkeep. A bony man with long stringy hair to his shoulders turned to scowl at them as they came through the door. The first slow peal of thunder rumbled across Four Kings.
"What do you want?"
He was rubbing his hands on a greasy apron that hung to his ankles. Rand wondered if more grime was coming off on the apron or on the man's hands. He was the first skinny innkeeper Rand had seen.
"Well, speak up, buy a drink, or get out. Do I look like a rarey show?"
Rand goes through the process that he has refined up to this point of selling himself as a flute player and Mat as a juggler. The innkeeper doesn't want them, but one of the waitresses steps in on their behalf, at which point this guy just decks her. quite a kick the cat moment. You immediately hate this guy. I mean, at that point, if I'm Rand, I kind of think I'm leaving the place. I'll go look for a barn. I think they said that there were boarded up buildings. I could squat for a night, maybe, if I were in their situation. Anyway, he chastises the woman after hitting her and then agrees to let them play, and he tries to give them a raw deal. Rand, to his credit, negotiates a better deal, and as they're talking, the innkeeper keeps looking at the heron-marked sword of Rand's, and Rand clocks it in a very dangerous way, which is good. He's learning to be mistrustful. The guy agrees to give them a pallet in the storage room. The innkeeper's name is Hake, by the way. And the two of them go up to start performing. Rand has an important thought as he's considering the fact that Hake was eyeing the sword. Was a bit of concern that the heron-marked sword, carrying it around, leaves a trail for the Myrddraal to follow. And it's hard to argue with that. He wonders if there are perhaps more mystical ways, I guess, of tracking them. And that's probably also true. But if nothing else, like, this guy Hake is dangerous enough without necessarily being an agent of the Dark One. As the rain starts pouring in, more and more people come in. They're enjoying the music. Again, we get the repetition of this place has different names for different songs. I really do like that. The way it builds the world. This is a very dangerous bar. At one point, a knife fight breaks out, and no one else cares. The bouncers go and remove the people every time a fight breaks out, but the environment of this inn is one of, to them at least, likely severe danger. These are dangerous people that stay here. Hake is continuing to eye the sword. We get this passage. Hake smiled when he looked at Rand and Mat. After a while, Rand realized Hake was not smiling at them. The smiles came when his eyes slid behind them to where the heron-marked sword lay. Once, when Rand set the gold and silver chased flute down beside his stool, the flute got a smile too. So it's so obviously telegraphed. When Rand has the opportunity to switch with Mat, he whispers, "Hake's going to try to rob us." Mat's response is that they should bar the doors that night, and I'm thinking, I'm surprised he still wants to stay there. I really am shocked throughout all of this that Mat isn't more willing to get out of there, considering how paranoid he's been about his own dagger. Rand argues that they should just get out of there then and there, which they should, but Mat says at least to wait until after they eat. Rand acquiesces because he's hungry too, which is really tough because you know they're making a mistake, I know they're making a mistake, he knows they're making a mistake. And all that's left is to just wonder, at the end of the day, how this situation is going to resolve itself. I mean, we already know it's going to resolve poorly because the cliffhanger from last chapter, Rand began to think their problems were over till they reached Caemlyn, but then they came to the Four Kings. So it's not exactly a surprise that things will turn south. A man comes in. He's dressed very fancily. This man was sleekly fleshy, with a soft look to his hands, and a velvet coat, and a dark green velvet cloak lined with blue silk was slung around his shoulders. All of his clothes had an expensive cut to them. His shoes, soft velvet slippers, not boots, were not made for the rutted streets of Four Kings, or for any streets at all for that matter. So immediately you realize that this guy is too rich for this place. He could absolutely afford one of the other inns if he's dressed like that. This guy's just asking to be robbed, except for the fact that it's made extremely clear that everyone there is very afraid of him. They all leave him alone. Sometimes people will go up and eat at the table with him and leave very quickly. Like, they won't even finish. They'll just take the food and go. And the segment is, he sat as if there were no one else in the room but him, and Rand and Mat. Them he watched over steepled hands that glittered with a ring on each finger. He watched them with a smile of satisfied recognition. Now, there was a part of me that wondering if this was Mordeth in some way from the fancy clothes, but I think Mordeth's clothes were a bit stranger, meaning more anachronistic, when they dealt with him in Shatter Logoth. A big part of the reason why I thought that is at one point, well, it's at this very next point, Matt says, "Who is he? I keep thinking I know him." So the fact that he keeps thinking he knows him is why I wondered if Mordeth. But likely not. Rand has that same tickling in the back of his memory, but he can't bring it forward. After about 2 hours, they want to take a break for food, so they start packing up their stuff, and Hake gives them a rough time. He doesn't want them to stop, and he certainly doesn't really want to feed them, and he tells them to be quick about it. They head into the kitchen, and Rand is saying, "We ought to get out of here while we have the chance." Matt still insists on eating first, which, no, I'm yelling at them this whole time. No, sneak out now. Leave while you can. But as they eat, or rather as Matt stuffs himself and Rand is kind of picking at his food, but he's not particularly hungry, the folks in the kitchen are talking about, presumably, that stranger, the scary stranger. Apparently, he went to all of the other inns, looked around, and left. And apparently, he had arrived at night. And it's just very, very strange all about. At that point, Rand does sneak out. He should have forced Matt with him. It's fine. He sneaks out to the back to look at the guy's carriage. By this point at night, it's raining very heavily. I wondered how much of this is normal weather, how much of this is magic weather. And as he sees the guy's carriage, he recognizes at least the style, I think, if not the specific one, from Whitebridge. In the brief burst of light, he made out a name in gold script on the coach doors, Howell Goad. He remembered where he had last seen black lacquered coaches with their owners' names on the door and sleek, overfed men in silk-lined velvet cloaks and velvet slippers. Whitebridge. A Whitebridge merchant could have a perfectly legitimate reason to be on his way to Camelin. A reason that sends him to half the inns in town before he chooses the one where you are? A reason that makes him look at you as if he's found what he's searching for? Precisely, Rand. Trust your gut. Trust the instinct, please. He heads back toward the kitchen, presumably to get Matt, and one of the bouncers gives him a rough time, semi-threatens him, accuses him of having stolen the sword from his grandmother. But Rand talks his way back in, saying Hake'll be mad if the entertainment isn't back on in a couple of moments. Matt's finishing his second plate, and Rand tells him the guy is from Whitebridge. Matt wonders if the guy is a dark friend, and at this point, yeah, I'm thinking that. Look, for a little while, I was wondering if the innkeeper was going to be good in some way. Surprisingly good, like if we were going for a subversion of expectation type situation. And then obviously we know that this guy is bad. But then I remember that the innkeeper beat his waitress. So, no, that's a pretty big signal that he's bad. And at the end of the day, I think the big point of this part of the story is Rand, and to a degree Matt, being able to look after themselves without the help of others. So that lends another layer of ominous to this, is because I'm asking myself, how are they going to get out of it? Because there isn't an expectation that someone's going to come along and save them at the last minute. They talk about leaving, but by that point, Hake comes in and chastises them for taking so long to eat, and more or less forces them back on stage. They start performing again, and it's an extremely anxious situation. You really feel it. You really feel it through Rand. It's really impressive how it's written in this way, because they're trapped. Rand is contemplating the trap. He had never realized before what a good trap an inn made. Hake, Jack, and Strom did not even have to keep a close eye on them. The crowd would let them know if he or Matt left the dais. As long as the common room was full of people, Hake could not send Jack and Strom after them, but as long as the common room was full of people, they could not get away without Hake knowing, and Goad was watching their every move too. It was so funny, he would have laughed if he had not been on the point of throwing up. They would just have to be wary and wait their chance. Rand brandishes the heron-marked sword. He decided not to take it off, which I think is wise, and it does give Goad some hesitation, and Rand notices it, so that's good. But at the end of the day, it is a bluff on Rand's part. I did wonder if they were going to attack their way out at some point, like if they were going to strike first and then end up with, wanted posters of them on the city wall in Camelin. That struck me as a strong possibility of how they could end up getting out. I definitely didn't think what would happen happened. I was leaning heavily into the they would strike first type thing and then be considered the bad guys for it. Goad is the last patron of the night, then heads off to bed, at which point Hake more or less forces the two of them into the pallet room, the room with the pallet. Rand has his sword prepared to use, and it causes some hesitation with Hake. You can pretty much tell Hake is trying to position the three of them, him, Jack, and Strom, to best attack them. They are wary because it is a heron-marked sword, though, and Rand is smart enough to position himself behind them. It's a tense walk. It's in a dark room. Like, the hallway to get there is dark, and there's only the lamp that Hake has. They get to the room. It's filled with dust and cobwebs and useless refuse, empty barrels and broken objects and what have you. And Rand does in fact know the sword makes him nervous. He won't try anything until we're sound asleep. So he very confidently tells Hake to leave the lamp, which he does. Good. The three leave. Jack and Strom are surprised, and Rand clocks that, so I think there was an intention to get them that night. But Hake more or less decides to wait until they're asleep, which is probably the smart move, especially knowing what we learn regarding the window. They wait a little while after the three of them leave. They open the door, and it's pure darkness, and they can hear someone in the distance, likely keeping an eye on them. The door opens inward into the storeroom, but there's no bar on it, so they can't lock it, and the window has bars on it, so they can't sneak out the window. This basically is a death trap for situations exactly like this. I have to imagine that this isn't Hake's first time doing what he plans to do. During a flash of lightning, Rand does find some splitting wedges, which they stick under the door, which serves well enough to lock the door, for the time being at least. Fortunately, so that's one problem down. I'm thinking, gee, they might be able to set up a nice little trap or something, should Hake try to break in. And at this point, I've actually kind of forgotten about Goad, to be totally honest. They found a rusty crowbar, so they spend a good deal of time trying to pry the window loose. But it's pretty much impossible, and they're waiting for lightning strikes and thunder to clap so that they can make a little bit of noise in trying to get the window broken without alerting anyone. And eventually, they hear knocking at the door. Someone's trying to break in. They think it's Hake, but it turns out to be Goad. And at this point, I kind of presume that Hake might be dead, but I can't be certain. When we learn for a fact that the guy is a dark friend, I presume that whichever of the two bouncers was watching them is definitely dead, though. Don't know about Hake, but almost certainly Jack or Strom. I was surprised at how openly Goad spoke about being a dark friend, and we get an idea of what any of the three from Emond's Field could become if they join with the Dark One. Because it seems that Goad is trying to essentially recruit them in a way. Goad says, "Of course, we have things to talk about. You know that as well as I. I see it in your eyes. I know what you are, perhaps better than you do. I can feel it coming from you in waves. Already you halfway belong to my master. Stop running and accept it. Things will be so much easier for you. If the Tarvalon hags find you, you'll wish you could cut your own throat before they are done, but you won't be able to. Only my master can protect you from them." "We don't know what you're talking about. Leave us alone." And Goad is not alone. He's brought people with him. "Stop being foolish, my young friends. You know. You know very well. The great Lord of the Dark has marked you for his own. It is written that when he awakes, the new Dreadlords will be there to praise him. You must be two of them, else I would not have been sent to find you. Think of it. Life everlasting and power beyond dreams. So, Dreadlords. They could become Dreadlords. And it seems to me that Dreadlords would be higher in the hierarchy than wherever Goat is. So that does create a little bit of an interesting dynamic here, which is neat. I have no doubt at some point in the series, I doubt the book, but in the series almost certainly we will see some Dreadlords. Goat is getting angrier and angrier, keeps pounding on the door, trying to get in because obviously Rand and Matt aren't letting them in. At one point, Matt says, "If we don't have any choice..." Matt licked his lips under Rand's stare. His eyes darted like the eyes of a badger in a trap. His face was pale and he panted as he spoke. "We could say yes and then get away later. Blood and ashes, Rand, there's no way out." The tension is rising. You really feel it. It's so well written. The tension. The words seemed to drift to Rand through wool stuffed in his ears. No way out. Thunder muttered overhead and was drowned in a slash of lightning. Have to find a way out. Goad called to them, demanding, appealing. The door slid another inch toward being open. A way out! Light filled the room, flooding vision. The air roared and burned. Rand felt himself picked up and dashed against the wall. He slid down in a heap, ears ringing and every hair on his body trying to stand on end. Dazed, he staggered to his feet. His knees wobbled and he put a hand against the wall to steady himself. He looked around in amazement. And I had a little bit of trouble figuring out what just happened. Like, obviously I knew that he had activated the one power, that he cast some sort of spell or something to that effect. That was clear right away, but I couldn't tell specifically what spell. There was a point where I wondered if it was like a holy flame that erupted from him or from the lantern more specifically and just kind of destroyed everything around him. There was a point where he was dazed and I wondered if maybe he had teleported him and Matt away from the area, but essentially we learn that the inn was struck by lightning. And we do know that Moraine can call lightning, so this is something we have sort of heard before, or something we know is possible with magic in this world, although we also do know that teleportation is possible, because Lan was wondering if that's how so many Trollocs got to chasing them in the hills. But, nevertheless, this was lightning. They're shocked. It takes them a little bit to become undazed. There's a giant hole in the building that they step out of. Matt can't quite see, but Rand does, and more specifically, he sees a bunch of dead bodies of Goad's allies who were surrounding them from the outside as well. Rand doesn't know what happened. He's saying, "What happened, Matt? Matt, what happened?" Matt seems to know that it was lightning. "Lightning, Rand. I was looking right at the window when it hit the bars. Lightning!" Nothing moved in the dark corridor beyond the door. Of Goad and his companions there was neither sign nor sound, though anything could have lain in the blackness. Rand found himself hoping they were dead, but he would not have put his head into the hall to find out for sure if he had been offered a crown. At which point, they start running. And when Rand looks back at one point... Once he looked back, before the rain thickened to a deafening curtain that blotted the dancing cartman from sight, lightning silhouetted the figure of a man at the back of the inn, a man shaking his fist at them, or at the sky. Goad or Hake, he did not know, but either one was as bad as the other. The rain came in a deluge, isolating them in a wall of water. He hurried through the night, listening through the roar of the storm for the sound of pursuit. End chapter. Excellently written, I think, extremely tense throughout. He's using the magic, which could be dangerous. The more he uses it, the more likely he's gonna touch the taint, the Dark One's counterstroke. But again, I still kind of think Lews Therin's nuke might have been to at least make it such that future Dragons Reborn could touch it without being tainted. But I don't know. Either way, it has me nervous. I think it has been sufficiently set up such that we know Rand can do this kind of thing, such that if someone were to say this is some sort of Deus Ex Machina, I don't think they would be correct. The thought did come into my mind, but I dismissed it relatively quickly because of the setup that has been done, the groundwork that has been laid to let us know that, yes, he can touch the power. I think that's all I got for now. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Okay, thanks, bye.